This is Nigeria, often referred to as the giant of Africa because of its economic potential and its large population. But this title is usually challenged by critics because of the contents of this area, the Niger Delta, a vast wetland network in southern Nigeria teeming with rich biodiversity and a vibrant cultural heritage. But most importantly, its vast oil and gas deposit. This is a story about how the greed and wickedness of multinational oil companies like Shell, Mobil, Chevron, ELF, and top-level political corruption quite literally are killing generations of people and the future of the country.
Greed, corruption, and the Niger Delta.
Politicians have promised a better life for these people. Politicians have promised that they are going to improve the standard of living for the people. They have also promised that they are going to improve their education. But if you look at the community, you can see that the people virtually feed from hand to mouth. They are poor and their livelihoods have been destroyed, their farmlands are gone, the water is gone. And tell me, how could they possibly survive?
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Please leave a comment and let me know your thoughts about this video. And if you're new here, please like, share, and most importantly, subscribe.
The Niger Delta, an oil-rich region in the southeastern Nigeria, has been significantly affected by the activities of multinational oil companies.
The environment speaks for itself. When they say the Niger Delta environment is the most polluted environment and degraded environment in the world, this is a very typical example.
These companies include Shell, Mobil, Chevron, ELF, and Agip.
It's written. When you go, you know, and the community will identify and tell you this pipeline belongs to this company.
Their presence has come at a high cost to the environment, local communities, and ecosystems.
A land of riches and challenges.
To really understand the Niger Delta, we must look at the geography of the Niger Delta.
Very important. The Niger Delta is a vast and ecologically diverse region located in the southern part of Nigeria. It is a web of rivers, creeks, swamps, mangroves, and rainforests where the mighty river Niger empties into the Gulf of Guinea. There are two ways to define the Niger Delta's size. Historically, the definition of the Niger Delta would encompass the state of Bayelsa, Delta, and rivers. But in the year 2000, the Nigerian government adopted a wider definition that includes 9 states: Abia, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Edo, Imo, Ondo, and Rivers. Using the wider definition, the Niger Delta covers roughly 70,000 square kilometers. That is about 27,000 square miles, making up about 7.5% of Nigeria's landmass. This area is significant to Nigeria for several reasons. It is rich in natural resources, the same kind of natural resources that make Saudi Arabia and Dubai the rich nations they are today, for the most part. Its massive reserves of oil and gas, which account for over 75% of Nigeria's export earnings. The region holds a significant portion of Africa's oil reserves, estimated at around 38 billion barrels. It is a biodiversity hotspot. The Delta's mangrove forests are vital for the health of the ecosystem. They provide habitats for a wide range of species, protect the coastline from erosion, and filter pollutants from the water. It is also a densely populated region, home to over 31 million people, about the population of California, from over 40 ethnic groups.
A history shaped by oil.
The Niger Delta boasts a rich history predating oil. Diverse ethnicities thrived with trade networks in palm oil, yam, and other crops. Kingdoms like Benin flourished, leaving behind a legacy of culture. The discovery of oil in 1956, however, drastically transformed the region. The first well, Oloibiri 1, in what is now Bayelsa State, marked the birth of Nigeria's oil industry and a shift towards oil as the economic mainstay from agriculture. Foreign oil companies, particularly Shell BP, played a major role in this area. The discovery of oil in the Niger Delta in the 1950s attracted multinational oil companies eager for profit. However, this rapid exploitation came at a steep price. While oil revenue fueled national development and provided some local jobs, it also resulted in environmental devastation. Oil spills, gas flaring, and leaks caused widespread pollution, releasing harmful toxins like methane, benzene, naphthalene, and black carbon into the air and water. Benzene can cause health issues like irregular heartbeat and even cancer. Naphthalene damages the eyes and liver and may be carcinogenic. Black carbon from flaring contributes to respiratory diseases and premature births. This not only damaged the health of residents but also destroyed the fisheries and agricultural practices that sustained their livelihoods. Frustration over environmental damage and a lack of shared economic benefit fueled social unrest in the region, highlighting the complex interplay between economic development, environmental protection, and the well-being of local communities.
The costly dilemma of gas flaring.
Gas flaring. The burning of excess natural gas during oil extraction presents a complex dilemma. While it boosts profits for oil companies, it comes at a high cost to the environment and human health. Exposure to high level of methane, a key component of flared gas, reduces oxygen intake, leading to various symptoms such as mood changes, slurred speech, vision problems, memory loss, nausea, and headaches. In severe cases, breathing and heart rate abnormalities, balance issues, numbness, and unconsciousness occur. Clearly, a solution is needed to balance economic gain with the well-being of people and the planet. But the question now is, can gas flaring be stopped? Yes, it can. However, multinational oil companies often resist due to cost concerns. These companies rake in billions of dollars annually, yet the expense of curbing flaring remains a continuous issue. While safety considerations justify some flaring, the burning of gases continues to harm people. Why not invest in reusable alternatives? For example, small electricity generation plants. Setting up power plants near oil fields to utilize associated gas for electricity generation can provide much needed electricity for local communities and reduce flaring by converting gas into useful energy. Initial investment costs are high, but long-term benefits outweigh them. Some offshore oil rigs, instead of flaring their gas, use it to generate electricity for the plant. So why can't these companies do the same, especially in these communities that have already paid enough? I think it all boils down to politics, because a responsible government could negotiate a fair deal for those affected communities if corruption was out of the way. Despite ambitious policies to end gas flaring by 2030, past deadlines have been missed. The Niger Delta's future hinges on addressing corruption, holding corporations accountable for environmental practices, and ensuring equitable distribution of oil revenue to improve the lives of the people in the region. Because while oil companies and politicians play games, people in these communities suffer. Lives are at stake, and the urgency to act is clear.
Oil spills.
Fishing and farming, once integral to local communities, have become impossible due to water and land pollution caused by oil spills and pipeline leaks. The Niger Delta has witnessed several catastrophic spills over the years, severely polluting aquatic environment and surrounding swamp forest. Here are some examples of oil spills in the Niger Delta. 1. The Focado Tank 6 terminal spill, 1979. Approximately 570,000 barrels of oil spilled into the Focado estuary in July 1979. The spill had dire consequences for aquatic life and the delicate swamp ecosystem. 2. Funiwa number 5 well spill, 1980. An estimated 421,000 barrels of oil spilled into the ocean from January 17 to January 30, 1980. This spill destroyed 836 acres of mangrove forest, an area roughly equivalent to the Central Park in New York City. 3. Oshika Village spillage, 1983. Approximately 5,000 barrels of oil spilled in 1983, flooding the lake and swamp forest. The spill caused high mortality among crabs, fish, and embryonic shrimp.
So basically, close to 1 million barrels of oil was spilled in the span of 3 years. Close to 1 million barrels of oil was spilled in a span of 3 years. This is in an area where they depend on their lands and waters for survival. And little or nothing was done in the form of compensation. That's weird.
The petroleum industry's ecological impact has been severe. Once lush vegetation and fertile soils have given way to oil infrastructure and contamination, disrupting the delicate balance of the ecosystem. While some Nigerian politicians and their immediate families benefit economically from the Niger Delta's resource wealth, the majority of the population faces poverty, death, and environmental ruin. The stark contrast between profit and suffering highlights the ethical dilemma posed by oil extraction. The Niger Delta's tragic history of oil spills serves as a painful reminder of the price paid for resource exploitation. Surely an urgent action is needed to protect both people and the environment. How corruption holds back development in the Niger Delta. Despite oil wealth enriching Nigeria, the Niger Delta suffers due to endemic corruption. Revenue meant for development projects is diverted into the pockets of a privileged few through a web of organizational weaknesses. The Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, established to improve the region's socio-economic well-being, is plagued by mismanagement and corruption. Funds allocated for infrastructure, education, healthcare, and community development are siphoned off through fraudulent contracts, embezzlement, and kickbacks. As a result, projects meant to benefit local communities remain unfinished or inadequate. Corrupt practices extend beyond the NDDC. Bribery becomes a barrier to accessing basic services like education, healthcare, and clean water, disproportionately impacting the poor.
So we are calling on the federal government to constitute a panel of inquiry to investigate, arrest and prosecute those that are responsible for looting of Niger Delta money.
Leaders whom we elected into office are now our oppressors. We can't keep being citizens in a country where leaders we elected are failing us on daily basis. Our roads are tattered, our schools are nothing to write home about. The future of the Nigerian generation is being looted.
We are going to Benin Road now, the federal road is in shambles. We are going to Asaba, the road is in shambles. Even within the commerce of Delta State, the road is in shambles. How long are we going to remain in penury? You buy a car today, tomorrow your car is rejected because of the bad roads in Niger Delta region. Our river area, our mothers, some of them, they have glaucoma in their eyes, no scope for them to go and get free eyeglasses. And we have this oil. We can't oppress us anymore.
Corruption weakens social programs as essential funds for safety net and poverty alleviation are diverted. Erosion of public trust is another consequence, discouraging citizens from participating in democratic processes and holding officials accountable. This leaves vulnerable populations without support and fuels social unrest. The result? Poverty, unemployment, and lack of basic infrastructures like healthcare and electricity in the oil-rich Niger Delta, creating a breeding ground for conflict. Armed militancy and protests. The Niger Delta region has a long history of unrest and conflict fueled by tension surrounding oil exploitation, as well as a feeling of socio-economic neglect by the Nigerian government. Motivations behind the unrest range from seeking environmental justice for local communities to demanding a fairer share of the wealth generated by oil production in the region. Militant groups have emerged to voice these grievances, employing tactics like sabotage of oil infrastructures, kidnappings, and attacks on oil personnel. These attacks often target oil installations, pipelines, and personnel working for the multinational oil companies. It is also very important to note that the militancy in the region all started with a peaceful protest. Here is a timeline of significant events and their underlying reasons. In the early 1990s, tension flared in the Niger Delta as foreign oil corporations, particularly Shell and others, were accused of exploiting the region's oil wealth without properly compensating local communities. Environmental degradation caused by oil spills further fueled anger. Minority groups like the Ogoni and Ejao felt marginalized by the Nigerian government and neglected by the economic benefits of oil production. Peaceful protests led by groups like the Movement for the Survival of the Ogoni People under Ken Saro-Wiwa escalated into armed conflict, highlighting a complex web of historical grievances and environmental concerns. In 1995, the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa, a renowned Ogoni activist and playwright, by the Nigerian government intensified grievances and sparked international condemnation. Saro-Wiwa's death fueled a new wave of protest, including the abduction of foreign oil workers and attacks on oil installations. This further strained relations between the government, oil companies like Shell, and the militant groups of the Niger Delta. In the 2000s, the environmental devastation caused by oil spills, gas flaring, and deforestation by oil companies continued to plague the Niger Delta. This, along with land acquisition for pipelines displacing communities, fueled social tensions. The movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta emerged as a powerful militant group, resorting to tactics like pipeline attacks and kidnappings to demand justice, environmental restorations, and a fairer share of the oil revenue for the region. The movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta's activities significantly disrupted Nigeria's oil production, a critical source of national income, forcing the government to respond with a combination of military force and attempts for negotiations. The 2010s saw a worrying trend in the Niger Delta as the focus shifted from oil industry targeted violence to a broader climate of instability. Kidnapping, piracy, ritual killings, and clashes between rival court gangs became more frequent. Land disputes and farmer-herder conflict also escalated. This complex web of factors resulted in a significant rise in violent incidents, causing death, displacement, and a general sense of insecurity across the region. Even though the Nigerian federal government's approach has often been to restore calm, the truth is these deployments sometimes increase insecurity. Communities have been raided, bombed, and caught in the crossfire. The presence of armed forces can escalate tension and lead to unintended consequences: civilian casualties. When military operations result in civilian casualties, it deepens resentment amongst local communities. Families who lost loved ones or suffer property damage may harbor anger and distrust towards both militants and the military. This fuels a circle of violence and perpetuates grievances. In 2016, the Niger Delta Avengers (NDA) became active. This militant group significantly disrupted Nigeria's oil production through attacks on oil pipelines and facilities. Their actions forced the shutdown of oil terminals and the country's oil output to its lowest level in 2 decades. These attacks stemmed from grievances about environmental degradation, lack of economic benefits for the region, and perceived marginalization by the Nigerian government. The NDA's action dealt a severe blow to Nigeria's oil sector, impacting not only the country's revenue, but also global oil prices. This highlights the complex and long-standing challenges in the Niger Delta, where resource wealth often coexists with poverty and environmental issues. In the 2020s, the Niger Delta continues to grapple with deep problems. Despite promises of development, many communities still face poverty, inadequate infrastructure, and environmental degradation caused by the oil industry.
Saudi Arabia.
Occupying most of the Arabian Peninsula is a country, Saudi Arabia, a vast nation with a rich history. Its deserts, mountains, and coastlines are home to over 32 million people. Saudi Arabia is rich in mineral resources, including gold, copper, phosphate, and rare earth elements, but most importantly, in oil reserves. Like Nigeria, Saudi Arabia is heavily reliant on its crude oil exports to sustain the country's GDP. But both outcomes seem to be completely different. Here is how Saudi Arabia and Nigeria approach oil exploration that might explain the difference in their outcomes. Saudi Arabia and Nigeria. Infrastructure and technology. Saudi Arabia heavily invests in maintaining and developing its oil infrastructure. This includes pipelines, refineries, and storage facilities. They also utilize advanced technology for exploration, extraction, and processing, maximizing efficiency and minimizing waste. Nigeria, on the other hand, often struggles with aging infrastructure and limited investment in new technologies. Focus on flaring reduction. Saudi Arabia has taken steps to reduce gas flaring, a wasteful and environmentally harmful practice. They reinvest captured gas for electricity generation or even export it. Nigeria, on the other hand, still flares a significant amount of gas, which contributes to environmental pollution and represents a lost economic opportunity. Government control and revenue management. Saudi Arabia's oil industry is tightly controlled by the state-owned Saudi Aramco, which allows for centralized planning and investment in long-term strategies. Revenue generated from oil is used to fund national development projects and social programs. In Nigeria, corruption and mismanagement of oil revenue have been an ongoing issue. This has led to less investment in infrastructure and development projects for the benefit of the population. Environmental regulations. Saudi Arabia, while still facing environmental challenges, has implemented stricter regulations on oil companies operating within their borders. Nigeria's environmental regulations may be less strict, leading to more environmental damage from oil spills and exploration activities. In short, Saudi Arabia's focus on infrastructure, technology, reduced flaring, and stronger government control over its oil industry contributes to greater efficiency and revenue generation from their oil resources. Nigeria, on the other hand, faces challenges with infrastructure, flaring reduction, and corruption, hindering their ability to maximize the benefit from their oil wealth. Conclusion. The presence of international oil companies, IOCs, in the Niger Delta cast a long shadow. While these companies reap significant profits from Nigeria's oil wealth, the environmental and human costs are staggering. Oil spills, pipeline leaks, and habitat destruction have ravaged the ecosystem, displacing local communities and destroying traditional livelihoods like fishing and farming. Lush landscapes have been replaced by oil infrastructures and contamination, forever altering the land and water resources. Corruption further amplifies the tragedy. Allegations of mismanagement of oil revenue and a lack of transparency suggest that some of the wealth generated isn't used to improve the lives of those most impacted. This stark contrast between the profits enjoyed by the IOCs and politicians and the suffering of the local communities raises serious ethical concerns. Striking a balance between economic benefits and sustainable practices is crucial to ensure a more equitable future for the region. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment and let me know what you think about the video. Also, please like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. See you in the next one.